my name is Will, and welcome to another review here on Alpha Omega Wolf Productions. So, over the weekend, I went and saw Avatar: The Way of Water. This movie is directed by James Cameron, and this takes place many years after the events of the first one. Jake and his family are living peacefully on the planet Pandora, but when a familiar threat comes back, his family must abandon the place they once called home. And there, they move to this village that's located in the water, in the ocean area. And there, they must learn to adapt and learn their new ways. Sounds a little familiar, doesn't it? Although I will say this movie does have a fair amount of differences, too, from the first movie. Now, before I should give you my thoughts on this movie, I should probably give you my thoughts on the first movie in general. I liked it. I don't think it's the masterpiece that everybody says it is, or that some people say it is. I guess it's fair, because this movie has a pretty good fan base. I will say, visually, then hands down, it's one of the greatest movies ever made. But everybody makes comparisons to movies like Pocahontas, and heck, even some of those environment-friendly movies like Fern Gully, and maybe even Dances with Wolves as well. And honestly, I was a little bit concerned because it's been 13 years, and until it was confirmed, I was a little skeptic on whether or not sequel was actually going to be made. In fact, I looked on IMDb and I saw that they already had like 5 sequels planned, which is insane. But I guess when you made one of the highest grossing movies of all time, even though you've re-released it several times, I think it's definitely warranting a sequel or two. So, with that being said, what do I think of this movie? This is going to sound crazy, but I think I like this a little bit more than the first one. Now, like I said, there are quite a few similarities to the first movie, but there are a decent amount of differences as well. Now, there are some characters in here that are, I guess, interchangeable, that you could give any line of dialogue to and it wouldn't make a whole lot of difference. Although, I feel like in this movie, the characterization is done a little bit better than the first movie. Not by much, but we actually know a decent amount about these characters. In fact, their daughter, the Jake and Neytiri, they have a daughter who is actually played by Sigourney Weaver, and they go into this huge backstory about her. And she probably got the most development out of everybody. Now, that's not to say everybody lacked character development. It's just she got more out of anybody else. And I think it's safe to say that the first Avatar movie was way ahead of its time in terms of technology, because this is once again one of the best looking movies I've seen in a long time. I've seen it in IMAX and 3D, and honestly, I think that's the best way to see it. It is on the biggest screen possible, because I feel like if you see it on a smaller screen, then it just doesn't feel. It's just not as magical as it once was when you first see it. Now, keep in mind, this movie is over 3 hours long, which brings up an interesting thought I had. The climax that they had, I think it lasted either a third or maybe even half of this movie. Because the movie doesn't waste a whole lot of time in getting the story going. In fact, I think they kept the story going throughout the whole thing. But also they wanted to show off some of the new visuals they could bring to the table. And one of my biggest gripes with the movie is I found the parts with the human characters a little bit, not boring, but they just weren't as interesting as when we went off into the wild jungles of Pandora. Now here, there's really not that much human characters in it, or that much human interaction. There is a human character, Spider, who is kind of an interesting character. I actually really dug his backstory. And I thought he also had a decent amount of character development, even though sometimes his motives are a little bit back and forth. Um, I will say my biggest gripe with this movie is the villains of this movie. I won't go into spoilers, but I just wish they could have something different with this. Like, you have a sequel, and I just thought they would do something different, you know? Now, I still really enjoyed this movie, even though I don't think it needed to be 3 hours long, but like I said, I think they just want to show off their cool 3D technology and that all their new visuals, which are fantastic. And I also like the designs of the new Navi that they bring in. Like they're kind of like a more light blue, kind of greenish. They have little tattoos on their faces. Their tails are different. They actually have a really cool design compared to the Force Navi. And if there is going to be a third movie, I'm willing to bet they're going to answer some questions that I'm sure a lot of us had from this one. Um, Hopefully, it ends up being a good payoff. Knock on wood. Um, but yeah, I like it. Not fantastic, but maybe I'll see it again in the near future. So I know Jessup doesn't really give grades, but if I had to give this one, I think I'd give this a pretty solid B plus or an A minus. I'd say that. So that just about does it for this review. If you did enjoy this video, then make sure to give it a big thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, subscribe for more content. Next, coming up, Jessup and I will be reviewing the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special, so be sure to stay tuned for that. So, until next time, see you later, Posse, and I see you.